In the northern
Hold on,
territories where
please.
winter claims the
Don't
mountains
you
with
dare
teeth of
leave me
ice
here.
and claws of
Stay
wind,
with me.
there are stories of survival that defy all reason. This is one of them. December 1285. The axe came down hard, wood split clean. The sound echoed across the frozen clearing like a gunshot sharp enough to wake the dead. But the dead stayed buried. They always did. Seraphine Vale stood in front of the cabin her husband had built 3 winters past, back when his hands were still strong, back when the silver mines hadn't yet claimed him. The axe felt heavy in her grip. Everything felt heavy now. The weight of the curse spreading through her veins. The weight of 2 mouths to feed. The weight of knowing that every swing of this axe, every log split, every breath taken in the bitter cold, was one day closer to the end. 6 months, maybe less. That's what the curse gave her. The Argentum curse. Silver poisoning, slow and patient as winter itself. It had seeped into her blood from the mine collapse, the same collapse that had taken Dorian and 28 others 7 months ago. The healers said there was no cure. The pack said there was no point, no cure. The pack said there was no point in trying. She was Omega, bottom rank, widow, dying, expendable. Sarah brought the axe down again. The impact traveled up her arms, settled in her shoulders, reminded her she was still alive, still breathing, still fighting. Mama, I'm finished. Isolde appeared in the doorway, 8 years old and far too serious for her age. She held up the kindlings she'd been stripping with a small knife, each piece cleaned with the precision of someone who understood that survival required skills most children never learned. Dark hair pulled back, eyes the color of winter sky. Her father's eyes. Good work, sweetheart. Stack it by the door. Sarah split another log. The woodpile was nearly gone. Another storm was coming. She could smell it in the air, that particular scent of snow and cold, that promised days trapped inside with whatever food and fuel they'd managed to gather. The pack wouldn't help. They'd made that clear. Omegas took care of themselves or they didn't survive. Simple as that. Caspian appeared next to his sister. 5 years old and swimming in his father's cut-down coat. Blonde curls escaping from beneath a wool cap. Mama, I heard something. Like thunder. Sarah stopped mid-swing. She'd heard it too. Not thunder. Gunfire. Maybe 2 miles away, coming from the direction of Blackwater Ridge. Rare, but not unheard of. Hunters, probably. Or someone running from the Chancellor's guards. The world had gotten meaner since Vargos Mordain had taken power 2 years ago. Meaner and colder and more willing to leave bodies in the snow. Just thunder, baby. Go inside and help your sister with the fire. But it wasn't thunder, and the forest was too quiet. The birds had stopped singing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Something was wrong. The feeling settled in her gut like a stone. That animal instinct, the wolf inside her, that rarely spoke but always knew. Danger was close. The world had shifted. Sarah gathered the firewood and went inside. She barred the door. Through the cabin's small window, she watched the tree line as darkness began to fall. The pines stood black against the gray sky. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. People said the winter of 1285 was the coldest in 50 years. But the frozen ground and bitter wind were nothing compared to the cold of loneliness. Dorian had been dead 7 months, and Sarah had just enough time to see both her children grown before the curse took her. Unless she found a cure, unless she found 800 gold crowns, unless she stopped being afraid and started being willing to do what needed to be done. She touched the window glass, cold as death. Beyond it, the forest waited. And in that forest, something was moving. Morning came late and gray. Isolde woke first. She always did. Rising before dawn to help her mother start the fire to heat water for the thin oatmeal that had to stretch through the day. She was putting on her boots when she heard it. A sound, low and broken, like an animal in pain, coming from outside. Mama, she shook Sarah awake. Mama, there's something in the woods. Sarah sat up instantly, alert. In the mountains, sounds in the night meant danger. Bears sometimes, rogues occasionally, and those were the worst kind of danger. She reached for Dorian's rifle, checked the load by habit. The silver bullets gleamed in the dim light. Expensive, deadly. She had 6 left, had to make them count. Stay with Caspian. Don't open the door for anyone. The snow had stopped during the night. Everything lay buried beneath a fresh blanket of white. Sarah's breath frosted in the air as she stepped off the porch, rifle ready. She followed the sound. It led her toward the frozen creek, past the bare birch trees, through the laurel thicket that grew thick along the water. The sound came again, weaker now, distinctly not animal, distinctly human. She found him at the edge of the frozen creek, half buried in snow. At first glance, he looked like something the forest had claimed and tried to keep. Hair black as midnight long, entangled with ice hanging past his shoulders. A beard thick and dark, hiding most of his face but unable to conceal the sharp line of his jaw. The scar that ran from his ear to his chin, old and white, against weathered skin. He was massive, easily 6'2" of solid muscle, shoulders broad as an ox beneath a torn deerskin coat. His arms, visible where the sleeve had been shredded, showed the kind of strength that came from years of hard living. Even unconscious and pale from blood loss, he radiated something. Power, maybe, or just the stubborn refusal to die. Blood soaked through his left shoulder, dark against the leather. A silver arrow broken off at the shaft still lodged in the muscle. His breathing came shallow and labored. Each exhale sent up a small cloud of vapor that proved he was still alive. Barely. Sarah knelt beside him, training overrode fear. She checked his pulse, weak but steady. The wound was high on the shoulder. The arrow had bled extensively but seemed to have missed major arteries. He would live, if he didn't freeze first, if the silver poisoning didn't spread. That's when she noticed his hands. Large, yes, calloused from hard work, but clean. The nails trimmed, not ragged, and on his right hand, barely visible beneath the glove, a ring. Heavy, gold. She pulled the glove off. The ring bore a seal, a wolf's head crowned, royal insignia. Her heart stopped. She should leave him. Every practical instinct screamed it. A stranger this far into the mountains, shot with silver, and running meant trouble, meant danger, meant risk to her children. But Seraphine Vale had been raised to believe that mercy was not optional, that the measure of a soul was found in how it treated those who could offer nothing in return. Dorian had believed it too. "We're only as strong as our compassion," he used to say. "Take that away, and we're just animals pretending to be human." The decision made itself. "Isolde," Sarah called toward the cabin. "Bring the sled and rope." Her daughter appeared within minutes, eyes wide at the sight of the unconscious man. "Mama, who is he?" "Someone who needs help. That's all we need to know right now." Together they managed to get him onto the small sled Dorian had built for hauling firewood. The man was heavy, dead weight, but Sarah had grown strong from 7 months of doing everything herself. Isolde pulled from the front. Sarah pushed from behind. Slowly, painfully, they dragged him through the snow toward the cabin. Caspian stood in the doorway, frightened eyes watching as they brought the stranger inside. Sarah directed them to lay him by the fireplace where the heat might reach him. "Isolde, get his pack from the sled. We need to check if he has supplies we can use." Her daughter obeyed, struggling with the heavy leather pack. As she lifted it over the threshold, the worn strap gave way. The pack tumbled to the floor. Contents spilled across the wooden planks. A hunting knife, wickedly sharp, well-maintained. A tin cup dented from use. Ammunition. Silver-tipped, military-grade, and a piece of paper, folded and worn from repeated handling. Isolde picked it up before Sarah could stop her. Her young eyes widened as she read the bold letters. "Mama, what does wanted mean?" Sarah took the paper with trembling hands. The drawing was crude but unmistakable. The man's face, younger, harder, but the same scar, the same jaw. Below the image, words that made her blood run cold. Theron Blackville, regicide, treason, desertion. 800 gold crowns. Reward wanted dead or alive. For a long moment, Sarah couldn't breathe. 800 gold crowns. More money than she'd seen since Dorian died. More than enough to buy the cure for her curse. More than enough to feed her children through the winter. More than enough to give them a chance at something better than slow death in a frozen cabin. All she had to do was turn in the man lying unconscious by her fire. All she had to do was choose gold over mercy. "Isolde," she said quietly, her voice firm. "Take your brother to the back room. Stay there until I tell you it's safe." "But Mama, who is he?" "A stranger who needs help. Now go." The children disappeared, casting worried glances back at the unconscious man. Sarah waited until she heard the bedroom door close before she allowed herself to really look at what she'd brought into her home. A wanted man, accused of regicide, treason, desertion. But wanted posters could be wrong. Sarah had lived long enough to know that law and justice were not always the same thing. She'd seen wolves punished for speaking truth to power, had watched as alphas like Vargos twisted facts to suit their purposes. She looked at the man's face, peaceful now despite the pain he must be in. In the delirium of fever he'd been muttering, names she didn't recognize, apologies to people who weren't there, and once clearly, "I won't do it, find someone else." Not the words of a man comfortable with violence. And that ring, royal insignia, if he was a deserter, why keep it? Why not sell it for coin? Sarah picked up the wanted poster, studied it in the firelight. 800 gold crowns, her children's future, her own life. She fed the poster to the fire, watched it curl and blacken and turn to ash. Then she set to work saving the life of Theron Blackvale. The arrow had to come out. Sarah laid out her tools, knife heated in the fire. Clean cloth, the last of Dorian's whiskey for sterilizing. Moonflower extract to draw the poison. Yarrow to stop bleeding. She cut away the man's coat, his shirt, exposed the wound. The silver arrowhead glowed faintly in the muscle. Already the skin around it had started to blacken. Silver poisoning. She knew it well, felt it in her own veins every day. "This is going to hurt," she whispered. "But you're too stubborn to die. I can tell." She poured whiskey over the wound. The man's body jerked. A low growl escaped his throat. Not quite human, not quite animal, something in between. Wolf, Sarah worked quickly. The knife cut clean. She found the arrowhead. It gripped it with cloth-wrapped fingers, pulled. It came free with a wet sound. Blood welled up, dark, threaded with silver. She packed the wound with moonflower paste. Yarrow leaves. Pressure to stop the bleeding. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, skills her mother had taught her. Mountain medicine, old ways. The man's fever spiked on the second night. He thrashed, muttered, cried out in languages Sarah didn't recognize. His skin burned hot enough to scorch. She kept him cool with snow water, fed him willow bark tea when he could swallow, kept the wound clean. Isolde watched it all, learning, taking notes in her careful child's hand. Caspian stayed in the corner, frightened but unable to look away. On the third morning, as Sarah changed the bandage, Theron Blackvale opened his eyes. They were the color of moss on wet stone, a pale green that seemed to carry light even in shadow. Sharp, intelligent. The eyes of someone who'd seen too much but still held capacity for gentleness. Those eyes fixed on Sarah's face with intensity that made her breath catch. "Ma'am," his voice was rough from fever and disuse. "Am I alive?" Sarah sat back, suddenly aware of how close she'd been leaning. "Yes, barely." He tried to sit up, winced, settled back against the rolled blanket she'd placed under his head. His hand moved instinctively toward where his weapons would have been. Found nothing. Understanding flickered across his face. "You took my weapons." "I did. They're safe, along with everything else that might be danger to my children." She'd secured his knife in the root cellar that first night. The rifle stood in the corner behind the door. Quality craftsmanship, military issue. His pack, hand-stitched and weathered, held the rest of his possessions. All of it spoke to a man who knew how to survive, who respected the tools that kept him alive. His eyes found Isolde and Caspian. They'd abandoned their rare pretense of playing and were staring openly at him. How many two, both who need their mother to survive this curse? Sarah's hand moved to her side, feeling the silver veins beneath her skin. 6 months left, maybe less. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or concern. "Where's your mate?" "Dead since May, mining accident." Theron absorbed this with the stillness of a man accustomed to calculating odds and outcomes. "I'm sorry for your loss." Genuine sympathy in his voice. "Obliged to you for your kindness." "Name's Theron Blackvale." "I know, I found the wanted poster." A pause long enough to be uncomfortable. And yet I'm still alive. For now, I haven't decided what to do with you yet. Theron almost smiled at that. Fair enough. May I ask your name, ma'am? Seraphine Vale. Outside, snow was falling again, soft and endless. The forest pressed close around the cabin. And in Tyesball, a dying woman and a wanted man sat across from each other, weighing trust against survival, mercy against reason. Why were they hunting you? Sarah asked. Long story. I've got time, and you're not going anywhere. Theron looked at the children, back to Sarah, made a decision. The charges are false. All of them. Everyone says that. I was Alpha King, ruled the Nightshade Pack for 8 years. Then Chancellor Vargos Mordain poisoned my mate, killed my children, framed me for their murders. His voice stayed level, controlled, but something burned beneath. Been running 2 years, trying to stay alive long enough to prove the truth. Sarah studied his face, looking for lies, found only exhaustion and old grief. You expect me to believe this story? Every criminal has a sad tale. I don't expect anything, Mrs. Vale, but I'll tell you this. The man who ordered my family, killed the man who put that price on my head, is the same man who owns the silver mines. His name is Vargos Mordain. Sarah turned sharply. Mordain, you know him? My mate died because of him. Sounds like your husband did too. They said it was an accident. Faulty support beams. Theron's eyes held hers. How many died? 29. He closed his eyes. Pain crossed his face that had nothing to do with his wound. Not an accident, Mrs. Vale. I'd stake my life on it. That's how they operate. Cut costs, ignore safety, let people die and call it bad luck. Sarah's mind raced. Dorian's last letter, the one she kept hidden in a tin box. He'd mentioned concerns about the mines, being forced to work in unsafe conditions. A foreman who pushed them harder, deeper, faster, despite the warnings. Can you prove any of this? I have evidence. My mate documented it before she died. She was royal physician, kept records of everything, every unsafe practice, every corner cut, every warning ignored. Where is this evidence? In my pack, which I assume you secured. Sarah retrieved his pack from the root cellar. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, she found it. A leather journal, worn, stained, filled with careful handwriting. She opened it. The first entries were dated 2 years ago. Medical notes. Observations about workers coming to the palace infirmary. Silver poisoning symptoms. Respiratory problems. Injuries from collapses. The handwriting was delicate, precise. Labeled at the top, Alara Blackvale, Royal Physician. Sarah turned pages. The entries grew more urgent, more detailed. Lists of violations, unsafe shafts, cracked support beams, toxic gas pockets. All noted or reported to Chancellor Mordain, all ignored. Then halfway through the journal, the handwriting changed, rougher, harder to read, but unmistakably familiar. Sarah's hands began to shake. She knew this hand, had seen it on letters, on notes left by the door, on the last message Dorian had written before going to work the day he died. North shaft, insufficient supports. Warned foreman, told to continue or lose position, May 1285. Below that, 17 wolves, too many. Someone has to stop this. The date, May 18th, 1285. The day of the collapse. The day Dorian died. Sarah's vision blurred. She read further. Found board entries in Dorian's hand. Weeks of documentation. Begging management to shore up the beams, close the shaft, do something before people died. All refused. All dismissed. All leading to that final entry. That final warning. That final day. I'm sorry you had to see that. Theron's voice was quiet. But now you know, your mate and mine. They died fighting the same enemy. Sarah looked up from the journal, tears on her face. He knew. Dorian knew he was going to die, and they made him work anyway. Vargos doesn't care about wolves, only profit, only power. She closed the journal, held it against her chest. Evidence, proof, justice, all here in her hands. And suddenly, 800 gold crowns didn't matter anymore. You can stay, she said, until you heal. But Mr. Blackvale, if trouble comes looking for you, I expect honesty about what we're facing. I won't have my children endangered by surprises. You'll have that, ma'am, and more. And what's more, Theron met her eyes. I'll teach you to fight, to protect yourself, to make them pay for what they took from us. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through gaps in the cabin walls, and somewhere in the darkness, 3 sets of tracks circled through the fresh snow, watching, waiting. The stranger in Seraphine Vale's cabin was no longer just a wounded man. He was a choice, a risk, and possibly, though she barely dared think it, a chance at something she'd thought lost forever. Justice, truth, and maybe in time, redemption for them both. A week passed in careful coexistence. Theron's strength returned faster than expected, though he moved cautiously, favoring the wounded shoulder. Sarah watched him with the wariness of a mother wolf, cataloging his habits, searching for signs of danger. What she found instead was a man who rose before dawn to tend the fire, who moved through her small cabin with deliberate quiet so as not to wake the children, who seemed to find genuine satisfaction in small tasks most men would scorn. He mended the loose handle on her water bucket without being asked, tightened the hinges on the door that had been sticking since the first hard freeze, crafted a better poker for the fireplace from scrap iron, shaping it with patient hands that suggested years of practice. You don't have to earn your keep, Sarah told him one morning, watching him measure flour for breakfast biscuits. His portions were smaller than what she would have served, rationing himself even as he helped prepare the meal. Habit, Theron said simply. My mother taught me idle hands invite trouble. Your mother raised you right. She tried. Something wistful in his voice. The sound of a man looking back across years that had taken him far from whatever lessons he'd learned. The children began to orbit around him like curious planets, drawn to his quiet presence but remaining shy, speaking in whispers, darting glances. It was Caspian who finally broke through. The 5-year-old approached Theron one afternoon with a question that had apparently been troubling him for days. Mr. Theron, do you know how to make things? Theron looked up from whittling a new handle for Sarah's broom. What kind of thing? Fun things. Papa used to make me toys. The boy's voice trailed off. Sarah felt her heart clench at the casual way her son spoke of loss, as if death were just another fact of mountain life. What kind of toys did your papa make? Wolves and warriors. And once he made Isolde a doll that looked like Mama. Theron studied the boy's earnest face. I could manage a wolf if you've got wood to spare. Caspian's eyes lit up. Really, truly, really? Truly, but you'll have to help. Can't make a proper wolf without the right kind of help. And so began what Sarah would later remember as the gentling of Theron Blackveil. She watched from the kitchen as he guided Caspian's small hands, selecting the right piece of pine, showing him how to feel for the grain, envision the shape hidden within the wood. His patience seemed inexhaustible, his instructions gentle but precise. See here, Theron pointed to a knot in the wood. That'll be the wolf's eye. We start with the eyes. Isolde joined them, quieter, more cautious, but curious despite herself. Sarah found herself smiling, the quiet scrape of knives on wood, the soft murmur of instruction and encouragement. The way Theron's face relaxed into something almost boyish when he forgot to maintain careful distance. But the peace was fragile, broken by moments when Theron's head would snap up at the sound of wind in the trees, the distant cry of a hawk. His hand would move instinctively toward where his gun should be, eyes growing sharp and distant. In those moments, Sarah remembered. Beneath a gentle teacher was a man who expected violence to find him. On the 4th night, as they sat by the fire after the children slept, Sarah asked the question that had been building. Do you ever sleep or just wait? Theron's hand stilled on the piece of cedar he was shaping into a bird for Isolde. Some. Your mate, Alara. What was she like doing? He was quiet so long Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. Strong, he finally said. Stronger than me in ways that mattered. She believed people could be better than they were. That kingdoms rose and fell on compassion, not just strength. He touched the wood gently, almost reverent. She was wrong about a lot of things, but not that. Dorian used to say every sunrise was a chance to start over. That a man could be anything he chose long as he was willing to do the work. Sounds like he was an optimist. He was, right up until the mountain fell on him. No bitterness in Sarah's voice, only weary acceptance. But that doesn't make him wrong. Theron looked at her, really looked, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Two people who'd lost everything learning to hold something new. That afternoon, Theron's strength had returned enough for him to venture outside the cabin. Sarah watched from the window as he made a slow circuit of the clearing. Eyes constantly moving, cataloging escape routes and defensive positions with unconscious thoroughness. When he returned, he brought deadfall for the fire and a grim expression. "We need to talk," his voice low, eyes flicking toward where the children played. Outside, Sarah followed him into the cold, pulling Dorian's coat tight. "What is it?" "Someone's been through here. 3 riders, coming from the east." Sarah's blood chilled. "You're certain, Yem?" "Certain." He pointed toward a stand of pines that offered clear view of the cabin. "Tracks are fresh, made this morning after the snow stopped. See how the edges are sharp, not melted or filled in." She could see them now. 3 distinct sets of tracks, circling, watching. "They spent time here," Theron continued. "Professional work. They were gathering information. Hunting you, most likely." "Why didn't they approach?" Theron's smile was grim. "Because I wasn't visible. They were scouting. Next time they come, it won't be to look." Sarah felt the curse flare in her veins, as if responding to her sudden fear. "How long do we have?" "Hard to say. Could be days, could be weeks. Depends how badly they want me. And if they come," Theron met her eyes directly, "then we'll be ready." But as she settled by the fire that night watching shadows dance on the walls, Sarah couldn't shake the image of those tracks. Circling her home like a noose drawing tight, the knowledge of being watched changed everything. Theron began each day checking the perimeter, looking for fresh signs. Sarah started training, learning to shoot, to fight, to think tactically. "Hold it higher," Theron instructed, adjusting her grip on the rifle. "Breathe out as you squeeze. Don't pull. Squeeze with." The rifle kicked. The target can jumped. "Better, again." Sarah reloaded, fired. The can flew backward. "Good, you're a natural." "I'm a muthfin, same thing." He taught her knife work, hand-to-hand combat, how to use her size against larger opponents, where to strike to disable, where to strike to kill. The children watched, learning without being taught. Isolde practiced with a wooden knife. Caspian learned to load the rifle. "You're making us into an army," Sarah observed one evening. "I'm making you into survivors." He fortified the cabin, reinforced the door, built shutters for the windows, created a second woodshed closer to the house, dug escape routes through the snow. "You're preparing for war. I'm preparing for the inevitable." On the 10th day, Theron found fresh tracks, closer this time. "Last night, while we slept, someone came within 50 yards. Sarah felt sick. They could have attacked. Still being cautious, but it won't stay that way. That evening after the children were asleep, Theron spread a map on the table. By lamplight, he traced routes through the mountains, pointed out landmarks, potential shelter. "There's an old hunter's cabin 5 miles north. Abandoned, but the structure's sound. If things go bad here, that's where you take the children." Sarah stared at the map. 5 miles through snow while I'm cursed and pregnant. "Theron, I couldn't make half that distance." "You could if you had to. People do remarkable things when their children's lives depend on it." She studied the path he'd outlined, trying to memorize every turn. "What about you?" "I'll buy you time, then handle things my way." His smile held no warmth. The conversation was interrupted by a soft sound from the children's room, Isolde calling out in her sleep. Sarah went to check, found her daughter tangled in quilts, murmuring restlessly. As she smoothed Isolde's hair, Sarah became aware of Theron in the doorway, watching. "She looks like you," he said quietly. "She has her father's stubborn streak." "That's not such a bad thing. Stubbornness keeps you alive when nothing else will." Sarah tucked the quilts around Isolde's shoulders, turned to find Theron still watching. But his expression had changed, something raw and vulnerable. The look of a man seeing something he'd lost and could never reclaim. "The children in your journal," Sarah said softly. "Tell me about them." Theron's jaw tightened. Some conversations are better left for daylight, Mrs. Vale. But Sarah had seen the pain in his eyes, the way his hands clenched when he spoke of his family. Whatever had happened, it was eating him alive. You're not just running from Vargos, she said. You're running from yourself. Maybe I deserve to run. Or maybe you deserve to stop. They stood in the doorway, two damaged people, learning to trust, learning to hope. I need to ask you something, Theron said, and I need you to know that whatever you answer, I'll respect it. Sarah's heart beat faster. All right. These past weeks, being here with you and the children, it's been the closest I've felt to peace since Alara died. He paused. You make me want to be better than I am. Make me believe I can be. Theron, I know it's complicated. I know you're still grieving, but I need you to know. If we're going to fight together, if we're going to survive this, I can't keep pretending you're just a stranger I'm helping. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the ice she'd built around her heart. What are you saying? I'm saying you're not alone anymore. I'm saying I'll stand with you, fight for you, die for you if it comes to that. Don't talk about dying. Then talk about living, about what comes after, if we survive. Sarah looked at this man, this wanted criminal, this exiled king, this gentle teacher who'd carved toys for her children and fortified her home and made her believe in justice again. If we survive, she said carefully, we'll figure it out together. It wasn't a promise, not quite, but it was enough. The next morning brought fresh snow and a discovery that made Theron's face go hard as winter stone. Sarah found him crouched beside the woodshed, studying something in the pristine white powder. More tracks. Closer. Someone came within 30 yards last night, stood right here watching the cabin. He stood, met her eyes. It's time, Sarah. We need to make a choice, run or fight. Sarah looked at the cabin, the home Dorian had built, the place where her children had been born, where she'd planned to die. But maybe there was another option. Maybe she didn't have to choose between running and dying. Maybe she could choose to fight. I have a plan, she said, but it's dangerous. I'm listening. You said Vargos wants you dead, wants the evidence destroyed. Yes. Then we give him what he wants. We let him think he's won. Theron's eyes narrowed. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to draw them out, make them come to us, on our terms, our ground. Sarah, you're cursed, dying. You can't. I can, and I will. She touched his arm. But I need your help. I need you to teach me everything, every trick, every tactic, every way to make them pay for what they took from us. Theron looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face, seeing something there that made him nod slowly. All right, we do this together, but on one condition. What? You promise me, whatever happens, you get the children out. You survive. Only if you promise the same. They stood in the snow, two people bound by grief and rage and something else. Something neither was ready to name. Deal, Theron said. Deal. That evening they began to plan in earnest, not for escape, not for surrender, but for war. Outside the wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow and smoke and the promise of violence to come. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the window, 3 sets of footprints circled through the fresh snow. Watching, waiting. But this time Seraphine Vale wasn't afraid. This time she was ready. Dawn broke cold and merciless over the Nightshade Mountains. Seraphine stood in the cabin doorway watching Theron saddle the brown mare. Copper, the horse that had carried Dorian through these mountains for 5 years before carrying his widow. Today she would carry Sarah 15 miles to Silvercrest Citadel. To find Magnus Silvercrest, the one elder Alpha Council member Theron trusted to hear truth about Vargos Mordain and the corruption that had killed 29 wolves. If she made it that far, the curse had worsened in the night. Sarah had woken coughing blood into her hand, silver veins spreading up her wrists like poison rivers. 6 months, the healers had said, but 6 months assumed she'd stay quiet, stay safe, stay dying. She was done with that. Mama, do you have to go? Isolde appeared in the doorway, clutching a worn shawl around her shoulders, 8 years old and already carrying the weight of the world in those winter sky eyes. Sarah knelt down, ignoring the protest from her curse-damaged lungs. took her daughter's face in her hands. Yes, sweetheart, but I'll be back before dark. What if those men come while you're gone? Mr. Theron will be here, and you remember what he taught you, don't you? Isolde nodded solemnly. 3 howls, run to the cave, stay quiet. Good girl, Sarah kissed her forehead. Stood, turned to find Caspian watching from inside with frightened eyes. She went to him, pulled him into an embrace, breathed in the smell of his hair, wood smoke and pine. Innocence. You're the man of the house while I'm gone. Take care of your sister. The 5-year-old straightened, trying to look brave despite the tremor in his chin. Yes, Mama. Theron led Copper to the porch. He checked the saddle 3 times, loaded Sarah's bags with dried meat in a canteen, positioned Dorian's revolver where she could reach it quickly. Now he stood holding the reins, face grave. Remember what we discussed. Stay on the main trail. Don't take shortcuts through the hollows. If anyone stops me, I'm visiting the midwife in Silvercrest. Nothing more. Sarah accepted his hand, mounted the horse. The motion was awkward, ungainly. The curse made everything harder. But she managed. Theron held the stirrup steady, looking up at her with those moss-green eyes. If there's trouble, any trouble at all, you turn back. Don't try to be a hero. I'm not trying to be a hero, Theron. I'm trying to survive. He stepped back, but not before Sarah saw something flicker across his face. Fear, perhaps, or something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. She turned Copper toward the forest trail, then paused, looking back. Theron stood in front of the cabin with Isolde and Caspian on either side. They looked like a family, broken pieces that had somehow fitted themselves together into something that resembled wholeness. The image stayed with her as she rode into the trees and left them behind. The forest was beautiful in its winter desolation. Snow clung to every branch, creating a world of white and shadow. Copper's hooves made soft crunching sounds on the frozen trail. Sarah's breath formed clouds in the air. She pulled Dorian's coat tighter around her cursed body. For the first hour, the ride was peaceful. She passed familiar landmarks. The lightning-struck oak where Dorian had proposed. The creek crossing where Caspian had caught his first fish. The ridge where you could see all the way to Silvercrest on a clear day. But as she descended into Blackwater Hollow, something changed. The birds stopped singing. The forest grew too quiet. Sarah's hand moved to the revolver at her hip, every instinct screaming danger. The wolf inside her, silent for so long beneath the curse, suddenly alert. They stepped out from behind the trees like predators materializing from shadow. 2 men on horseback, blocking the trail ahead. Sarah pulled Copper to a halt, heart hammering against her ribs. She recognized them from the tracks around her cabin. Broad-shouldered and thick-necked like a bull. The other tall and lean with the cold eyes of a snake. Mrs. Vale, the bull's voice was deceptively pleasant. Out for a ride. I'm going to Silvercrest. Please move aside. Dangerous for a woman in your condition to be traveling alone. The snake urged his horse closer, gaze moving over her with assessment that made Sarah's skin crawl, especially on roads where accidents happen. Sarah's fingers closed around the revolver grip. I said move aside. The bull reached for his gun. Sarah acted on instinct, drew Dorian's revolver, fired. The shot went wide, intentionally so, passing close enough to the snake's head that he jerked backward with a startled curse, lost his balance, tumbled from his saddle into the snow. The next one won't miss, Sarah said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. But the bull was faster than she expected. He spurred his horse forward, swung his arm hard, knocked the gun from her hand. Sarah cried out as she lost her balance, sliding from Copper's saddle. She managed to turn as she fell, protecting herself from the worst of the impact. But the frozen ground still drove the air from her lungs. Pain lanced through her side. For a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only lie in the snow, gasping like a landed fish. The curse flared, silver veins burning. Blood in her mouth, the bull dismounted, stood over her. Should have stayed home, Mrs. Vale. Chancellor just wants to talk. Liar. Sarah tried to rise, but the bull put his boot on her shoulder, not pressing, just holding her in place. The snake climbed to his feet, brushing snow from his coat, face red with fury. That crazy bitch nearly shot me. Shut up, Cassius. Vargos said no marks. We take her back. Let him decide what to do. The hell with that. She shot at me. A third voice cut through the argument. Let her go. Both men turned. A rider sat his horse 20 feet away. Red hair bright against the gray forest. Hand on his gun. Face harder than Sarah remembered from the tracks. Older. Weathered by whatever guilt he carried. Callahan. The bull's voice carried genuine confusion. What are you doing? I said let her go. Cassius laughed. Harsh sound without humor. You gone soft, Cal. She's helping the king. Vargos wants them both. I don't care what Vargos wants. Callahan's hand moved to his gun. I watched Queen Alara burn. Watched her children die. Didn't stop it then. It's eaten at me every day since. His voice dropped. Dangerous. I won't watch another she-wolf die. Not today. You're making a mistake, the bull said quietly. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. The confrontation hung balanced on a knife's edge. 3 armed men, each calculating odds and outcomes. Sarah used the moment to roll away from the bull's boot. Trembling behind a fallen log, Cassius made the decision for all of them. Drew his gun. Callahan was faster. The shot echoed through the hollow like thunder. Cassius stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, weapon falling into the snow, blood spreading dark against his coat. Go, Callahan shouted at Sarah. Get back to the cabin, warned Blackveil. They're coming tonight. The bull was reaching for his gun when Sarah found Copper's reins, hauled herself into the saddle. She kicked the mare hard, sending the horse plunging through the trees, away from the trail, away from the violence. Behind her, she heard more gunshots, men shouting, the sounds of battle she didn't stay to witness. Copper ran through the forest with the sure-footedness of a mountain-bred horse, leaping logs, dodging low branches. Sarah clung to the saddle, one hand on the reins, the other pressed to her side where the curse burned hottest. Feeling the silver veins spread with every movement, feeling blood on her lips, feeling death creeping closer with every breath. But not yet, not while her children needed her, not while Theron was alone. The cabin appeared through the trees like salvation. Sarah pulled Copper to a sliding stop in the yard, half fell from the saddle, her legs nearly buckled, but she caught herself on the porch railing. Theron, her voice came out as a croak. Theron! He burst through the door with his rifle ready, saw her disheveled state, was at her side in 3 long strides. What happened? Ambush. 2 of Vargos's men. Callahan helped me. The words came out in gasps between breaths. Blood flecked her lips. He said they're coming tonight. Theron's face went still. That way Sarah had learned meant he was thinking fast and hard, making calculations, planning moves. How many? I don't know. Callahan said to warn you. Can you ride? We need to get you and the children away from here. Sarah shook her head. No time. They could be an hour behind me, or 10 minutes. She met his eyes. We stay, we fight. Sarah, you're cursed, dying. You can't, which is why running isn't an option. She grabbed his arm. We've run far enough, Theron, both of us. It ends here. For a moment she thought he would argue, then something shifted in his expression, a kind of grim acceptance. All right then, we do this smart. He helped her inside, calling for the children. Isolde, Caspian, come here. The children appeared, faces tight with fear at the urgency in his voice. Theron knelt before them, speaking with calm authority that cut through panic. Listen carefully. Bad men are coming. When you hear 3 howls from me, you run to the cave like we practiced. You stay there until Mama or I come get you. No matter what you hear, no matter how scared you get, you stay hidden and quiet. Understand? Both children nodded, eyes wide. Can you do that for me? Yes, sir, Isolde whispered. Good girl. Now go pack a blanket and some food, just in case. As the children scurried to obey, Sarah sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The ride, the attack, the fear, it all crashed over her at once. Her hands were shaking. Theron brought her water, waited while she drank. We need to change plans, he said. No Silvercrest today. What do? We make them think twice about coming after us. He moved to the window, studying the approaches to the cabin, the tree line, the clearing, the escape routes he'd mapped. They'll come at dusk, try to use the darkness. We need to be ready. The afternoon passed in tense preparation. Theron positioned supplies around the cabin, extra ammunition, water, bandages. He showed Sarah the best firing positions, the angles that would give them most coverage. You take the north window, I'll cover the south. If they rush us, fall back to the bedroom. It's got the strongest door. Sarah checked Dorian's rifle, her hand steadier now, purpose driving out fear. And if they try to burn us out, then we go through the back window, run for the cave with the children. It was a grim plan, full of ifs and maybes, but it was all they had. As the sun began to sink toward the western ridges, Theron made one final check of the perimeter. He returned with fresh tracks, grim face. 6 horses, coming from the east. They'll be here within the hour. Sarah's stomach clenched. 6 armed men against 1 wounded king and a dying widow. The odds were impossibly bad, but she thought of Dorian buried in the Silvercrest Cemetery under a wooden cross, thought of Queen Alara and her children burned alive for the crime of knowing too much, thought of the 29 miners who had died because Vargos Mordain valued profit over life. "We're not running," she said. Theron looked at her. Something in his expression made Sarah's breath catch. Not love exactly, not yet, but the beginning of something that might become love if they survived long enough. "No," he agreed, "we're not." He pulled 3 carved whistles from his pocket. Hollow reeds, handed one to Sarah. "When I blow mine, you blow yours. The children will hear and run." Sarah took the whistle, tucked it into her apron pocket next to the small Bible her mother had given her on her wedding day. Strange. The things you carry into battle. Isolde and Caspian appeared, bundled in coats, carrying a small pack. They looked terrified but determined. Sarah felt a surge of fierce pride at their bravery. "Remember," Theron told them one and last time, 3 howls, run north, stay hidden." "We will," Isolde promised. Taking her brother's hand, Sarah hugged them both, breathing in the smell of their hair, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against hers. "I love you, both of you, more than anything in this world." "We love you too, Mama." Then there was nothing left to do but wait. The sun touched the ridgeline, painting the snow orange and gold. Shadows lengthened across the clearing. In the distance, a crow called once, fell silent. Sarah took her position at the north window, rifle ready. Through the wavy glass, she could see the tree line where the forest met the clearing. Nothing moved, but she could feel them out there, waiting for darkness. Beside her at the south window, Theron was utterly still, barely breathing, like a predator waiting to strike. The rifle in his hands looked like an extension of his body, held with the easy competence of someone who had used such weapons all his life. Minutes crawled past. The light faded from gold to purple to deep blue. Stars began to appear in the eastern sky. Then Sarah saw it. Movement at the tree line. A shadow that detached itself from other shadows. Became a man on horseback. "Theron," she whispered. "I see him." "I see him too." More shapes emerged. 2, 3, 4, 5. They stayed at the edge of the clearing. Just visible in the twilight, a voice called out, cultured and cold. "Blackveil, I know you're in there." Sarah recognized it from Theron's descriptions. Vargos Mordain himself had come to finish this. Theron moved to the door, opening it a crack. "I'm here, Vargos. Surrender yourself and the woman. This doesn't have to end in violins." "You mean it doesn't have to end with you bleeding?" Theron's voice carried grim amusement. "We both know you'll kill us regardless." "Not necessarily. Give me the journal. Give me the evidence. Walk away and live." "Can't do that, Chancellor. Too many dead already. Alara, Dorian Vale, 27 others whose names you probably don't even remember. It ends tonight." There was a pause, then Vargos's voice again. All pretense of civility dropped. "Burn them out." Sarah saw the torches lit, saw 2 riders move forward, firebrands held high. Theron fired twice. One torch fell, its bearer crying out. The other torch arced through the air, landing on the cabin roof with a shower of sparks. Then everything changed. Theron's eyes flared amber. gold bleeding through green. His body rippled, muscles shifting beneath skin. The air around him crackled with power that made Sarah's breath catch. He shifted. Where the man had stood, a massive black wolf now crouched, larger than any alpha Sarah had ever seen. Muscles coiled like steel springs beneath midnight fur, eyes burning with ancient authority. This wasn't just a king who'd lost his throne. This was the alpha commander who'd won the border wars. Vargos's men stumbled backward. Even their own wolves whimpered. Coward. Theron's power rolled across the clearing like thunder before a storm. He threw back his head and howled. The sound split the night, primal, commanding, unstoppable. Then he attacked. The smell of smoke reached his ear almost immediately. The dry wooden shingles caught fast. 3 howls, Theron said calmly, raised the reed whistle to his lips. The sound cut through the gathering darkness. 3 sharp blasts, Sarah added hers. Then again, 3 more. In the back room, she heard Isolde and Caspian scramble for the window, heard the soft thud as they dropped to the ground outside, ran for the forest. They were safe. Whatever happened now, her children would survive. Now, Theron said, we make them pay for every inch. The gunfight that followed was brief and brutal. Vargos's men rushed the cabin. Theron's rifle spoke with methodical precision. 1 man went down, then another. But there were too many, and the fire was spreading fast. Smoke filled the cabin. Sarah could barely see, could barely breathe. She fired blindly through the window, more to keep attackers at bay than with any hope of hitting them. The curse flared, silver veins burning up her arms, blood in her mouth, her vision swimming. Sarah! Theron's voice cut through the chaos. Back door, now! She stumbled through the smoke, found his hand, let him pull her toward the rear of the cabin. Behind them, the front wall erupted in flames. They burst through the back door into cold, clean air. Sarah gasped, coughing, eyes streaming, the curse screaming through her body, every nerve on fire. Theron pulled her toward the forest, toward safety, toward the cave where her children waited. But they'd made it only 20 feet when a figure stepped out of the darkness ahead. Vargos Mordain, immaculate in his expensive coat, a pistol in his hand, firelight reflecting in his cold eyes. Going somewhere, Your Majesty. Theron pushed Sarah behind him, his own gun coming up. For a moment, the 2 men faced each other across 10 feet of snow, stained orange by the burning cabin. Then Sarah heard it. Hoofbeats, many of them, and voices calling out with authority. Alpha Council, hold your fire. Her heart leaped. Through the smoke and darkness, riders appeared, led by a man in his late 40s with silver hair and a council badge gleaming on his chest. Magnus Silvercrest had arrived, and with him, the law had finally come to the mountains. The world seemed to hold its breath. Vargos stood frozen, pistol still raised toward Theron and Sarah. Behind them, the cabin burned, flames reaching toward the night sky like grasping fingers. And surrounding them all, Magnus Silvercrest and his council guards sat on horseback, weapons drawn, faces grim in the firelight. Magnus was a solid man, gray hair, weathered face that came from years of hard decisions and harder consequences. His badge caught the light from the burning cabin as he urged his horse forward. Chancellor Mordain, Magnus's voice carried the weight of alpha authority. Lower your weapon. Vargos's face transformed. The mask of cold calculation slipped, replaced by something almost charming. Almost. Elder Silvercrest, thank God you're here. These criminals attacked my men. I was defending myself. That's interesting, Magnus replied, tone suggesting he found it anything but. Because I received word 3 hours ago from one of your own betas. Something about an ambush on an innocent woman. Something about orders to kill on sight. Vargos's smile faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Magnus dismounted, his deputies following suit. I also have here a journal, very interesting reading, medical records, engineering reports, evidence of corruption spanning 2 years. Understanding struck Sarah like lightning. Callahan. He must have gone straight to Silvercrest after the ambush, delivered the evidence himself, brought the council here before Vargos could finish them. One good deed to balance a lifetime of bad ones. Vargos's composure was cracking. This is ridiculous, Elder. I am a respected member of the council. These are wanted criminals and trespassers. I have every right to defend my interests. Your interests, Sarah stepped forward, Theron's hand on her arm in warning but not restraint. Is that what you call 29 dead wolves' interests? Mrs. Vale. Vargos's voice dripped false sympathy. I understand you're grieving your mate, but Dorian died in an unfortunate accident. Mining is dangerous work. It wasn't an accident, Sarah's voice rose, fueled by 7 months of suppressed rage and grief, silver veins glowing on her skin, blood on her lips. You knew those support beams were rotted. You knew the ventilation was inadequate. Dorian wrote about it. He warned your foreman, and your foreman told him to work anyway or lose his job. Hearsay and speculation. I have his letters. Sarah reached into her coat, pulled out a bundle of papers wrapped in oilcloth, kept close to her heart since Dorian's death. Every one of them documenting the unsafe conditions, documenting the threats. She turned to Magnus. And I have Queen Alara's journal. She documented every unsafe section of the silver mines. My husband added to it before he died. Together they prove a pattern of deliberate negligence spanning 3 years. Magnus took the letters, scanning them by firelight. His face grew harder with each page. Deputy Cole, place Chancellor Mordain under arrest. On what charge? Vargos's veneer finally shattered, revealing cold fury beneath. For now, attempted murder, arson, assault with intent to kill. Magnus nodded toward Theron. King Blackveil's exile was never legally ratified by full council. The wanted posters were forgeries, which means any attack on him is an attack on rightful authority. 2 deputies moved toward Vargos. The Chancellor's remaining men, seeing their employer about to be arrested, made the calculation that loyalty had its limits. They lowered their weapons. Vargos was still sputtering protests as the silver manacles closed around his wrists. This is a travesty. I'll have your position, Silvercrest. I have allies in the capital, powerful allies. Then I suggest you have them hire you a good lawyer. You're going to need one. As the deputies led Vargos away, Sarah felt her knees buckle. The adrenaline that had kept her upright through the ambush and the gunfight suddenly evaporated, leaving her shaking and weak. The curse flared, silver veins spreading, blood pouring from her nose, her vision darkening. Theron caught her, arm around her waist. Easy. I've got you. The children, Sarah gasped, coughing blood. I need to get to the children. I'll find them, Magnus offered. Where are they? Cave, Theron said, half-mile north. But they won't come out for anyone but us. Then you'd better go to them. Magnus looked at the burning cabin, already collapsing in on itself. I'll have my men secure the scene here. Sarah tried to stand, couldn't. The curse was eating her alive, every breath agony, silver spreading up her neck, into her face. I can't walk. Theron didn't hesitate, swept her up in his arms, cradled her against his chest, started running. Through the forest, following the path to the cave, Sarah barely conscious in his arms, tasting blood, feeling death creeping closer with every heartbeat. Stay with me, Theron growled. Don't you dare leave me now. Trying, she whispered, trying so hard. They reached the cave entrance. Isolde Caspian, Theron called. It's safe, you can come out. For a moment, nothing, then 2 small figures emerged from the darkness, running toward them with tear-streaked faces. Mama! Isolde crashed into them, nearly knocking Theron over. Caspian wrapped his arms around Sarah's legs, sobbing. Shh, it's all right. You're safe. We're all safe. Theron knelt, still holding Sarah. Let the children press close, his large hands gentle on their small backs. You did perfect, he told them. Exactly what you were supposed to do. Your father would be proud. Sarah watched through dimming vision, the 4 of them there in the moonlight, smoke still rising from the ruins of her cabin in the distance, and felt something shift deep in her chest, not quite healing, not yet, but the possibility of it. They returned to find Magnus organizing his deputies. 3 of Vargos's men were in custody. 2 had fled into the night. The elder seemed unconcerned. They'll turn up eventually. Men like that always do. He turned to Theron, still carrying Sarah. She needs a healer, now. I know, but the nearest one is here. A woman stepped forward from the group of deputies, older, gray-haired, kind eyes. "I'm a healer, let me see her." Theron laid Sarah down gently on a blanket someone had spread. The healer knelt beside her, examining the silver veins, the blood, the curse spreading. "How long has she been cursed?" "7 months," Sarah whispered, "since the mine collapse." "And you've been fighting this whole time, fighting?" The healer shook her head, admiration in her voice. "You should be dead." "Still working on that." The healer pulled bottles from her pack, herbs, tinctures, things Sarah didn't recognize. "This will slow the spread, but it won't cure it. There's only one cure for our Gentum curse this advanced." "What?" Theron demanded. The healer met his eyes. "Royal blood from a living Alpha King." Silence. Then Theron was rolling up his sleeve. "Take mine. All of it if you need." "Theron, no." Sarah tried to sit up. Couldn't. "You're weak from fighting. You'll die." "Better me than you." "It's not better. The children will have their mother. That's what matters." Magnus stepped forward. "There's another option. Older, more dangerous, but it might work." "Tell me," Theron said. "The Queen's trial. Ancient law. If Mrs. Vale can survive drinking royal blood while silver-cursed, she's deemed worthy of Luna status. The ritual itself breaks the curse." "Survival rate?" Sarah asked. Magnus hesitated. 50%, maybe less in your condition. "And if we do the transfusion?" 50%, you both die. "The king's too weak. You're too far gone." Sarah looked at Theron, at her children, at the burning cabin where Dorian had built their life. She'd been dying for 7 months. Time to make it count. "I'll take the trial." "Sarah, it's my choice, Theron. Let me make it." He stared at her, then slowly nodded. The healer prepared the ritual, drew blood from Theron's arm into a silver cup, added herbs, moonflower, wolfsbane, things that would kill an ordinary wolf. "Once you drink this, there's no going back. The curse will fight. You have to be stronger than it. You have to want to live more than it wants to kill you." Sarah took the cup, her hands shaking, silver veins glowing brighter, protesting what was about to happen. She looked at her children, Isolde holding Caspian. Both terrified, she looked at Theron, saw something in his eyes that took her breath away. Love. Raw and new and terrifying. Worth fighting for, worth living for. Sarah raised the cup to her lips and drank. The blood hit her system like liquid fire. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the curse recognized the threat. Silver veins exploded across her body, burning, consuming, fighting the royal blood with everything it had. Sarah screamed, convulsed, felt her wolf tear free for the first time in months. But the curse had weakened her wolf, poisoned it. And now the two warred inside her body, silver against royal blood, death against life. "Mama!" Isolde screamed. Theron held Sarah down, kept her from hurting herself in the convulsions. "Fight. Damn it, Sarah, fight." She was fighting, fighting with everything she had, but it wasn't enough. The curse was winning. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. She could hear her children crying, hear Theron's voice growing distant, feel death's cold fingers wrapping around her heart. And suddenly, she was somewhere else, standing in the mine. The day of the collapse. Dorian was there, covered in dust, holding a support beam that was cracking, splintering. "Run," he told her. "Get out. I can't leave you." "You have to, for the children, for yourself, for what comes after." "Dorian, I'm already gone, love. But you're not. You still have time. You still have purpose." He smiled, that gentle smile she'd fallen in love with. "Make it count." The vision shifted. Now she was in a burning palace. Queen Alara stood before her, beautiful even in death, holding two small children. "Protect him," Alara said. "Protect Theron. Theron. He's stronger than he knows, but he needs you to show him." "I don't know if I can." "You can. You already have." Alara touched Sarah's face. "We didn't die for nothing. We died so you could fight, so you could win, so you could change things." The vision shifted again. Now 29 wolves stood before her, men and women, some she recognized, most she didn't, all dead, all waiting. Is it our turn? One asked. Our turn for justice? Yes, Sarah whispered. Your turn. Then live, they said in unison. Live and make them pay. Sarah opened her eyes. She was back in her body, the curse still fighting. But something had changed. She had changed. The silver veins began to recede, slowly at first, then faster, the royal blood winning, consuming the curse, burning it away like fog in sunlight. Sarah gasped, coughed, felt clean air fill her lungs for the first time in 7 months. The pain faded. The darkness retreated. She could breathe. Yura, Theron's voice, rough with emotion. Sarah, can you hear me? She turned her head, saw him kneeling beside her, tears on his scarred face. I hear you. Thank the gods. I thought so too. She tried to sit up. Theron helped her. But I'm not done yet. Still have work to do. Magnus stepped forward, staring at her with something like awe. The curse is broken. I can see it. The silver's gone from your blood. Sarah looked at her hands. The veins were clear, normal. For the first time since the collapse, she felt whole. How long was I out? 2 hours. The children had been beside themselves. Isolde and Caspian rushed to her, crying, holding her tight. Mama, you were dying. You were shaking and bleeding and... Shh, I'm all right now. I'm all right. But she wasn't. Not entirely. The curse was broken, but she'd paid a price. She could feel it. The trial had changed her, strengthened her in some ways, weakened her in others. Her wolf felt different, sharper, more present, like something had been unlocked. There's one more thing, the healer said quietly. A side effect of the Queen's trial. It's unprecedented, but I can see it in your blood. What? You've gained partial alpha abilities. Not full, but more than an omega should have. The royal blood didn't just cure you, it transformed you. Sarah felt it then, a power she'd never possessed, humming beneath her skin, waiting. Is that normal? Nothing about you is normal. Mrs. Vale, you survived a curse that should have killed you in weeks, fought battles that would break trained warriors, drank royal blood and lived. Normal doesn't apply anymore. Magnus cleared his throat. We should move. Get you and the children somewhere warm, somewhere safe. There's a council lodge 3 miles east. You can rest there while we process the prisoners. What about Callahan? Sarah asked. In custody. He surrendered himself. Wants to testify. He saved my life, saved all our lives. I know, we'll take that into account. As they prepared to leave, Sarah turned to look at the burning cabin one last time. Everything Dorian had built, everything she'd struggled to maintain, gone. But she felt no grief, only fierce satisfaction. Justice was coming, and she'd be there to see it done. Theron appeared at her side, offered his hand, ready. Sarah took his hand, felt the warmth of it, the strength. Ready. They walked together toward the horses, toward the future, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the cabin collapsed in a shower of sparks. Ahead, the night waited. But Seraphine Vale wasn't afraid anymore. She'd walked through fire and emerged stronger. She'd faced death and chosen life. And now, finally, she was ready to fight for the justice 29 dead wolves deserved. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 days later, Seraphine stood in the grand hall of Silvercrest Citadel. The room was ancient stone and high windows, built by wolves who believed justice should be witnessed in the light. Hundreds had gathered, pack members from across the territories, families of the dead, witnesses to history. And at the center of it all in silver chains stood Vargos Mordain. He looked smaller now, without his title, without his power, just a man who'd let greed consume him until there was nothing left but hunger and ash. Elder Magnus Silvercrest sat at the high bench, flanked by 4 other council alphas, their faces carved from stone, their judgment absolute. Vargos Mordain, Magnus intoned, you stand accused of regicide, 29 counts of manslaughter, 6 counts of corruption, 3 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. How do you plead not guilty? Vargos's voice carried none of its former authority. These charges are fabricated. Political persecution. You demand nothing. Magnus's words cut like a blade. You are no longer chancellor. You hold no office, no rank, no authority. You are prisoner, and you will answer for your crimes. The trial lasted 2 days. Sarah testified on the first, stood before the council and 500 witnesses, held up Dorian's letters, read them aloud. Every warning, every plea, every desperate attempt to save lives that fell on deaf ears. Her voice never wavered, even when she read the last entry, the one dated May 18th, the day her husband died. North Shaft insufficient supports, warned Foreman again, told to continue or lose position. Too many families depend on this work. Cannot quit. Cannot let them starve. But someone has to know. Someone has to remember. If I don't come home, tell Sarah I tried. Tell her I loved her. Tell her to fight. Silence filled the hall. Sarah looked at Vargos, saw nothing in his eyes. No remorse, no recognition, just the cold emptiness of a man who'd never cared about anything beyond his own advancement. 29 wolves died, she said quietly, because you chose profit over lives, because you valued silver more than souls. She held up the journal, Alara's careful handwriting divisible even from a distance. Queen Alara tried to stop you. My husband tried to stop you. You killed them for it. I killed no one, Vargo said. Accidents happen in mines. That's the risk of the work. You knew those beams were rotted. You knew the ventilation was failing. You were warned, repeatedly, and you chose to do nothing. Speculation. Evidence. Theron stood, walked to the council bench, laid out documents, engineering reports, safety assessments, all stamped with Vargos's seal, all approving unsafe conditions to maintain production quotas. Your signature, your orders, your responsibility. The evidence was overwhelming. Mining supervisors testified about quotas that forced them to ignore safety. Workers testified about threats of job loss if they refused dangerous assignments. Healers testified about the steady stream of poisoning victims they treated, all pointing back to one man, one decision, one pattern of negligence that spanned 3 years. On the second day, the council deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Magnus's face held no mercy. Vargos Mordain, we find you guilty on all counts. The sentence is death by silver injection, to be carried out at dawn tomorrow. Vargos finally reacted, lunging against his chains. You can't do this. I have allies' connections. The capital will... The capital has been notified. They concur with our judgment. Magnus stood. You will spend your final night reflecting on the lives you destroyed, and tomorrow you will face the same death you inflicted on so many others. Slow, painful, inevitable. I made the pact strong. I brought prosperity. You brought blood and ash. Magnus's voice dropped, deadly quiet. And now you'll answer for it. Take him away. Guards dragged Vargos from the hall, his protests echoing off stone walls until they faded into nothing. Sarah felt Theron's hand on her shoulder. It's done, he said softly. Justice is served. But it wasn't done, not yet. There was still one more trial. They brought Callahan Reed before the council the next afternoon, after Vargos's execution. After they'd watched the former chancellor convulse and scream as silver poison ate through his veins. After justice had been purchased with a death that mirrored the deaths he'd caused. Callahan looked different in chains. Smaller, older. The red hair seemed duller, the shoulders less broad, like whatever fire had driven him for years had finally burned out, leaving only ash and regret. Callahan Reed, Magnus began, you stand accused as accomplice to regicide, accessory to the murder of Queen Alara and her children, conspiracy in the deaths of 29 Pax members. These are capital crimes. Do you understand? I understand. How do you plead guilty? Callahan's voice was steady. I was there when the Queen died. I heard her screaming for her children. Heard the children screaming for her, and I did nothing. I followed orders, kept quiet, let it happen. He looked directly at Theron. I deserve death, I know that. But I hope what I did at the end counts for something. That helping Mrs. Vale, bringing you the evidence, turning against Vargos. I hope it means I'm not completely damned. Silence in the hall. The prosecution called for execution. Listed Callahan's crimes in detail. His years of service to Vargos. The orders he'd carried out. The wolves he'd helped oppress. Then it was time for defense. And Theron Blackveil stood. Your Majesties, he addressed the council formally. I wish to testify on behalf of the accused. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Magnus leaned forward. You wish to defend the man who helped murder your mate and children. I wish to speak truth, Theron's voice carried to every corner of the hall. Callahan Reed was a coward. He stood by while innocent wolves died. He followed evil orders from an evil man. These are facts, undeniable. Callahan's head dropped. But, Theron continued, cowardice is not the same as evil. Fear is not the same as malice. And redemption is possible, even for those who think they're beyond saving. He walked to stand before the council bench. 2 weeks ago, Callahan had a choice. He could follow orders and capture Seraphine Vale, collect his reward, continue living in Vargos's pocket, or he could do the right thing, knowing it would cost him everything. He chose right. He shot his own companion, helped a dying woman escape, rode straight to the Citadel, and delivered the evidence that brought down Vargos. He turned on everything he knew, everything he'd built, because he finally found the courage to stand up. That's worth something. That has to be worth something. Or what's the point of any of this? What's justice if there's no room for redemption? Magnus studied Theron's face. You would spare the man who helped kill your family. I would spare the man who helped save my future. Then Sarah stood, walked to the center of the hall, every eye on her. Callahan Reed saved my life, she said. He took a bullet protecting me. Sent word to the council that brought help when we needed it most. Without him, my children would be orphans. Theron would be dead. Vargos would still be chancellor. 29 deaths would still be unavenged. She turned to the council. He was a coward once, but he found courage when it mattered most. He chose right when it would have been easier to choose wrong. That's the definition of honor. Not being fearless, but being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. I ask this council for mercy, not because his crimes weren't serious, but because mercy is what separates us from men like Vargos. Because without it, we're just animals, pretending to be civilized. The council deliberated for an hour. When they returned, Magnus's face was unreadable. Callahan Reed, your crimes warrant death. By law, by tradition, by the blood debt you owe, he paused. But law must have room for mercy. Tradition must allow for change, and blood debt can be repaid with service. We sentence you to 10 years labor, rebuilding the silver mines to safety standards. You will work alongside the families of those who died. You will hear their stories, know their names, carry their memory, and at the end of 10 years, if you've proven yourself worthy, your crimes will be forgiven. Callahan's knees buckled. Guards caught him before he fell. Thank you, he whispered. I'll earn this. I swear it. I'll spend every day as earning this. As they led him away, he caught Sarah's eye, mouthed 2 words, thank you. Sarah nodded once. Some debts were paid in blood. Others were paid in mercy. Both had their place. The question of Sarah's status came the next day. The council convened in private session. No audience. Just the 5 alphas and the 2 people at the center of the controversy. Theron Blackveil, rightful king, and Seraphine Vale, Omega, who'd survived the Queen's trial. The matter is unprecedented, Elder Rothgar said, gray-bearded, conservative, voice heavy with dodum. No Omega has ever taken the Queen's trial. No Omega has ever sat as Luna. She survived the trial, Theron countered. Ancient law is clear. Survival proves worthiness. Ancient law assumed only high-ranked she-wolves would attempt it. The trial was designed to test betas and alphas, not omegas. The law makes no distinction. It says any she-wolf who survives becomes Luna. Sarah survived, therefore she is Luna. The pack will never accept an Omega Queen. The pack will accept what's right. Elder Lyris, the only female council member, spoke. The boy has a point, Rothgar. Law is law. We can't rewrite it just because the outcome makes us uncomfortable. This isn't discomfort. It's thousand-year tradition. Rank structure exists for a reason. To keep omegas in their place. Sarah's voice cut through the argument, quiet but sharp. To ensure they stay powerless, voiceless, invisible. Hrothgar's eyes narrowed. You overstep Omega. My name is Seraphine, and I've earned the right to speak. She stood, faced the council. I bled for this pack. My mate died in your mines. I fought your battles, survived your trial, brought justice for 29 dead wolves. What more do I need to do to prove I'm worthy? It's not about worth. Then what is it about rank at I can't change what I was born? But I can change what I become. And I became Luna, not through bloodline, not through inheritance, through trial by fire, through choosing to fight when running was easier, through surviving what should have killed me. She stepped forward, voice rising. You say the pack won't accept me. The pack rebuilt my cabin, testified alongside me, fought beside me. They accept me. It's you who can't accept that an Omega might be strong enough, brave enough, worthy enough to lead. Silence. Then Elder Magnus spoke. She's right. Hrothgar turned sharply. Magnus. She's right, Hrothgar. We're clinging to tradition that doesn't serve us anymore. Rank structure kept order when we were at war, when we needed clear hierarchies. But we're not at war, and our traditions just enabled a corrupt chancellor to kill 29 wolves because they were low rank and therefore expendable. That's not, it is exactly what happened. Vargos knew those miners were mostly omegas and low betas, knew no one with power would speak for them, knew they could see and the pack would move on. That's what our precious tradition created, a world where some lives matter more than others. Magnus stood, walked to Sarah. You survived the Queen's trial. You brought down corruption. You fought for justice. You earned your place. I vote to confirm you as Luna Queen. As do I, Laris said immediately. Elder Hadrian, silent until now, spoke. And I. 3 votes in favor. Hrothgar looked at the final member. Elder Brennus, ancient, nearly 70, a stickler for tradition. Brennus, Hrothgar's voice held hope. The old alpha studied Sarah for a long moment, then smiled. The girl has fire. The pack needs fire. I vote to confirm. 4-1. Hrothgar slumped in his chair. This is a mistake. Perhaps, Magnus said, but it's our mistake to make, and I think history will prove us right. He turned to Saren Theron. King Theron Blackveil, Luna Seraphine Blackveil. By the authority of the Alpha Council, we restore your reign. You will rule jointly, equal authority, equal voice, equal power. Theron started to speak. Sarah touched his arm, stopped him. With respect, Elder, I don't want to rule as Theron's equal. I want to rule as his partner. There's a difference. Explain. Equal suggests we're competing for the same space. Partner suggests we're building something together. I'm not trying to replace him or match him. I'm trying to stand beside him. Complement his strengths. Cover his weaknesses, as he'll do for me. She looked at Theron. I don't want to be queen because I survived a trial. I want to be queen because I can help these people, make their lives better, change laws that failed them, give voice to wolves who've never had one. Can I do that as your partner? Theron's eyes held something that made Sarah's breath catch. Pride, respect, love. You can, he said. You will, and I'll be honored to stand beside you while you do it. Magnus smiled. Then it's settled. Coronation will be held in 3 days, giving time for the pack to gather, to witness, to accept. As they left the council chamber, Theron caught Sarah's hand. You didn't have to fight for equal authority. I would have given it to you. I know, but I needed to fight for it, needed them to know I'm not here by your grace. I'm here by my own merit. They know that now. Good, because we have work to do, laws to change, systems to rebuild, omegas to protect. Theron pulled her close. We will, together. The coronation took place on the winter solstice. Shortest day of the year, longest night. The moment when darkness held the world in its grip and light had to fight to return. Fitting, Sarah thought for a ceremony about new beginnings. They held it outside. In the great clearing where the pack had gathered for generations, where challenges were issued, where bonds were formed, where history was made, 500 wolves assembled in the snow, families who'd lost loved ones in the mines, warriors who'd fought in Theron's wars, Omegas who'd spent their lives invisible, all gathered to witness something that had never happened before, an Omega becoming queen. Sarah wore white, simple dress, no jewels, no crown yet, just clean lines and quiet dignity, her dark hair loose, her eyes clear, the silver veins of her former curse now just faint scars, badges of survival. Theron stood beside her in black, king's colors. The crown he'd lost 2 years ago finally returned. But he didn't wear it yet. Wouldn't until Sarah had hers, partners, not competitors. Elder Magnus performed the ceremony. Theron Blackveil, 2 years ago you were exiled, falsely accused, hunted like prey. You lost your mate, your children, your throne. Everything that defined you was stripped away, and yet you survived, fought, never stopped believing in justice. He placed a hand on Theron's shoulder. The council was wrong. We failed you, failed to see the truth, failed to protect you. But you never failed your people. Even in exile, you fought for them. And today we restore what never should have been taken. He lifted the crown, heavy silver and black steel, forged from the same mines that had claimed so many lives. Reclaimed now, repurposed. Do you accept the burden of leadership, the weight of responsibility, the duty to serve those who cannot serve themselves? I do. The crown settled on Theron's head. A roar went up from the crowd, wolves howling, the sound echoing off the mountains. Welcome home, King. Welcome home. Then Magnus turned to Sarah. Seraphine Vale, you were born Omega, lowest rank, least power, least voice. You lost your mate to corruption, watched your children nearly starve, felt death creeping closer every day, and you never stopped fighting. He held up the second crown, lighter than Theron's, silver without steel, shaped like winter branches. You survived the Queen's trial, something no Omega has ever done. You brought down a tyrant, gave voice to the voiceless, fought for justice when justice seemed impossible. You've earned this crown, not through bloodline, not through rank, but through courage, through sacrifice, through refusing to accept that some wolves matter more than others. Do you accept the burden of leadership, the weight of responsibility, the duty to serve those who cannot serve themselves? Sarah's voice rang clear. I do. The crown settled on her head, and the crowd erupted. Not just howls this time. Voices, names. Seraphine, Seraphine, Queen of the Lost, voice of the voiceless. Sarah felt tears on her face, looked out at the assembled pack, saw Omegas crying, saw mothers clutching children, saw hope where there'd been only resignation. Something was changing, something fundamental, and she'd be there to guide it. The first law Sarah changed was the Omega Protection Act, passed 3 months after coronation. It guaranteed minimum wages for Omega workers, safety standards that couldn't be waived, the right to refuse dangerous work without penalty, legal representation in disputes with higher ranks. It wasn't revolutionary, just basic dignity, but it was a start. The second law was the Mining Safety Charter, based on Dorian's notes and Alara's research. Mandatory inspections, independent oversight, severe penalties for violations, and a memorial fund for families of those who died in unsafe conditions. 29 families received compensation, not enough to replace what they'd lost, but enough to survive, to rebuild, to know their loved ones hadn't died forgotten. The third law was the Council Reform Act, requiring at least 2 Omega representatives on the Alpha Council, ensuring every rank had voice in governance. It passed by a single vote, but it passed. Change was slow, hard, fought at every step by those who benefited from the old ways. But it was happening, and Sarah stood at the center of it, fighting, arguing, refusing to back down. Theron supported her, publicly and privately, used his authority to push reforms through, made enemies among the old guard, didn't care. They'll forgive us, he told Sarah one night. after a particularly brutal council session. Or they won't, but we're doing what's right. That's what matters. You're sure you could have had an easier reign, a traditional Luna who didn't rock the boat? I could have, but then I wouldn't have you. He pulled her close. And you're worth all the trouble, all the fighting, all the change. Sarah kissed him, gentle, then fierce. Good, because we're just getting started. 12 years later, winter 1298, Seraphine Blackveil stood on the steps of the rebuilt Royal Hall, watching young Omegas practice combat in the training yard below. She was 40 now, gray threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes from years of fighting and laughing and living, but strong, healthy, the curse just a distant memory. Theron appeared beside her, 48, silver in his black hair, the scar from ear to chin faded but still visible. Still handsome in the way of men who'd survived things that should have killed them. They're good, he observed, watching the Omegas spar. They're excellent. Another year and they'll be ready for guard duty. The traditionalists will hate that. The traditionalists hate everything else. We stopped caring what they think years ago. Theron laughed, wrapped an arm around her waist. They stood together, watching their kingdom thrive. Isolde appeared from the hall, 20 years old now. Tall, confident, wearing council robes. She'd been elected Alpha Council member at 19. Youngest ever, proving that merit mattered more than bloodline. Mama, Papa, the monument dedication starts in an hour. Are you ready? Almost. Where are your brothers? Caspian's with the guard, inspecting the mines, and the twins are studying in the library. Twin sons, born a year after coronation, 10 years old now. Brilliant, curious, already showing signs they'd grow up to change the world. 4 children, all healthy, all loved, all carrying the legacy forward. Guay saw him. Sarah couldn't ask for more. They walked together to the town square, where a monument stood, tall granite, polished, carved with names, 29 wolves who died in the silver mines. Dorian Vale among them, Queen Alara and her children. All the lost, all the fallen, all those who'd paid the price for justice. Below the names an inscription. Their truth brought justice. Their sacrifice brought change. May we never forget the price of silence. The dedication ceremony was simple. Families of the dead spoke, shared memories, told stories, kept the lost alive through words. Sarah laid flowers at the base, touched Dorian's name with gentle fingers. We did it, she whispered. Changed everything, just like you wanted. Theron laid flowers beside hers, at Alara's name. Thank you, he said softly, for showing me what strength looks like, for teaching me compassion, for believing people could be better. They stood together in front of the monument, king and queen, partners, survivors, and behind them the pack gathered, hundreds strong, changed from what they'd been, better, fairer, more just, not perfect, still problems to solve, still fights to win, but better, always better. That evening, Sarah taught a class, young Omegas, 15 students, all learning combat, all learning law, and all learning they didn't have to accept the world as it was, that they could change it. Why do we train? Sarah asked, circling the students. To protect ourselves, one answered. To prove we're strong, another said. To change minds, a third offered. All true, Sarah confirmed, but the real reason is simpler. We train because we can, because no one has the right to tell us we're too weak, too low, too other to defend ourselves. We train because strength belongs to everyone, not just those born to it. She demonstrated a move. Quick, efficient. The students mimicked. Your rank doesn't define you. Your choices do. You can be Omega and warrior, Omega and scholar, Omega and leader. You can be anything, everything, whatever you have the courage to become. One student raised her hand, young, maybe 15. Queen Seraphine, they say you were dying when you became Luna, that the curse should have killed you. How did you survive? Sarah smiled. I wanted to live more than I was willing to die. I had children who needed me, a kingdom that needed changing, a partner who believed in me. That was enough. She looked at each student. Find your enough, your reason to fight, your purpose, and nothing can stop you. The class ended. Students filed out, chattering, energized, believing. Sarah stood in the empty training hall, remembering the cabin in the snow, the dying man she'd saved, the journey from widow to warrior to queen. All of it impossible, all of it real. Theron appeared in the doorway, still teaching them to rebel. Always. He crossed to her, took her hands. The council wants us to tour the Northern Territories next month, show the reforms are working, inspire the outer packs. More speeches, more chances to change minds. Then we go. Sarah leaned into him, together. Always together. They walked out into the evening, hand in hand. The mountains rose around them, ancient, unchanging, witness to everything that had been lost, everything that had been won. In the distance, the monument stood. Names catching the last light. 29 dead, but not forgotten, never forgotten. Their sacrifice had purchased this. A kingdom where Omegas had voice, where safety mattered more than profit, where justice was more than a word. Not perfect, but better. Always striving to be better. Sarah looked up at the stars beginning to emerge, felt the weight of the crown on her head, the weight of responsibility, the weight of all those who depended on her to keep fighting. It was heavy, but she was strong enough to carry it, had been carrying it for 12 years, would carry it for 12 more, for 29 dead wolves, for a kingdom learning to value all its people, for children who needed to see that change was possible, for a mate who stood beside her. Always. What are you thinking, Theron asked? That we did the impossible, survived the unsurvivable, changed the unchangeable. And I'd do it all again. Every hard choice, every battle, every moment of doubt. Because this is worth it. They're worth it. She gestured to the kingdom spread below. Lights beginning to glow in windows. Families gathering for evening meals. Omegas walking streets without fear. Children playing without hunger. Peace purchased with blood and tears and refusing to give up. We built something good, Theron agreed. We built something true. They stood together as darkness fell. King and queen, warrior and survivor, partner and partner. Two people who had found each other in the snow, in the fire, in the fight for justice. Two people who'd learned that the best things in life are the ones we never planned for, the ones that fall bleeding into our lives and change everything forever. In the Northern Territories where winners still tested the strong, there were stories of survival that defied all reason. This had been one of them, a story of a dying woman and the exiled king she saved, of corruption exposed and justice served, of love found in unexpected places in families built from broken pieces. But more than that, it was a story about truth, that redemption is possible, that mercy is strength, that change, real change, comes from those brave enough to demand it, that some debts are paid not in gold or blood, but in courage, in compassion, in refusing to accept that some lives matter more than others, and that sometimes the most unlikely people become the greatest heroes. Not because they were born to it, but because they chose it. Every day, every battle, every moment, they chose to fight. And in the end, that made all the difference.